How's it going? We're going to talk about subject lines today. I'm Jamie, he's James, and we're from the Inbox Club. The Inbox Club podcast, take one. Take one.
We're not industry professionals,
No,
so
absolutely not.
that makes no sense.
Yeah.
So what are we doing here in a garage in Surrey, filming, Jamie?
Yeah, what are we doing? Especially, it's -1 outside. We've got some heaters going on. But yeah, we've got an agency to grow. The world definitely doesn't need a couple more dweebs thinking that they know what they're talking about on camera doing a podcast, but here we are.
Luckily, we don't know what we're talking about, so there are absolutely no concerns there.
At least we can do is try and make this a bit entertaining for you. But yeah, I'm Jamie.
I'm James, confusingly.
Yeah, we know a bit about email marketing. So hopefully we can give you some cool info here, something that you can take away. But feel free to just watch this and laugh at us because we don't know what we're doing when it comes to videoing stuff. So
the awkwardness is palpable. I'm afraid that comes through in
this intro is particularly painful for me right now. So we're going to make it through though.
Shall we move on to something email-y?
Absolutely. We're going to chop this up. We're going to get it out into the world into little shorts in this podcast, but you might want to watch it in its entirety. If you do, get a life. Go watch Netflix or something because there's much more interesting stuff out there. So, yeah, without further ado, should we dive in?
Let's do it.
Oh, we're the Inbox Club, by the way. Did we say that?
Oh, yeah. No. That's probably the most important bit. That's the headline.
Inbox Club, email marketing, e-commerce and newsletters. We love newsletters. Probably a bit too much.
Yeah, subject lines.
Subject lines, they're a big one. Everyone talks about subject lines. Everyone's got an opinion.
They do, yeah. And it's worth noting, I think, before we start on subject lines, that some studies suggest they are not the most important thing to be looking at.
Interesting, okay.
I don't want to start straight in by saying, let's ignore them. But it's worth just bearing that in mind. Yes, subject lines are really important, but let's be measured about it as well. It's not the be-all and end-all. And a bit like a logo or a brand name, I feel like people spend too long agonising over subject lines sometimes.
Okay.
Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think disproportionately, the amount that they're talked about by email marketing experts and the amount that they're kind of pained, the amount of pain that goes into it and the work that goes in behind people agonizing over their subject lines, trying to get them perfect. Yeah, they're important, but not the be all and end all, right?
Exactly. And really, I think when you break down a subject line into its constituent parts, you find that they kind of write themselves as long as you have a good email. And one thing I'd recommend right off the bat is, if you're struggling with your subject line, write the email first and retrofit a subject line around it.
In fact, I do that quite regularly for our own newsletter and for some clients. Yeah, like the subject line. In fact, we should have filmed the intro to this podcast after we'd finished all the content because that would have been easier to go back to the top.
Now we've got that awkward monstrosity to go back to.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Okay, so we've talked about why subject lines aren't the be-all and end-all, right? But why...
Might as well just go home now.
Yeah, see, job done.
Yeah.
But they are important. So what is it about subject lines that is important, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, 40% of people will look at it first when deciding to open your email. So it's not the majority, but it's still a significant enough portion that we need to put some time into it and really be thoughtful about it. One of the things that I really like about A/B lines is that they're quite an easy A/B test. So
subject lines, you mean?
Did I not say that?
A/B lines, yeah.
Oh, A/B.
Yeah.
French.
Yeah.
My French accent.
Yeah.
I'll start that again.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really like about subject lines is that they're really easy to A/B test. So this doesn't need to be about guesswork. You know, we can make informed decisions. We can come up with a hypothesis. For example, would my subject line get more opens if I included an emoji in it? And then we don't need to guess that. We can actually find that out using A/B testing. So
yeah, for sure.
I would say that's the first takeaway is don't leave this to guesswork. Use testing.
Yeah.
In terms of what let's imagine you've just written one of our newsletters. What's the sort of criteria that you're thinking about when you're writing a subject line?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that you want to tick off with subject lines. Instantly for me, I want to try and grab attention, right? It's your headline, it's the porch to your house, it's the shop front to your store. It's your pickup line to your Tinder match, right? You want to make a good impression, you want to grab attention. So for me, attention is one of the first things I think about. And then you want to kind of leave like this EastEnders cliffhanger moment, right? Where it's giving you enough to make you want to see more, but not giving away too much so that you know the full story, right? So for me, it's, you want to grab attention, but you want to leave just enough in there to make people think, okay, well, this is going to be worth opening, right?
Without being clickbaity. I think that's the other thing. You don't want to be misleading in the way that you build that intrigue.
Yeah.
You don't want to promise something that you're not going to deliver on.
Exactly.
But you want to kind of float the carrot, I guess.
Yeah, but the weight of responsibility for delivering on that promise then comes in the email afterwards, right? So the subject line, and that's why I like what you said earlier about writing the email first and then the subject line, because you get to know exactly the content you're producing and what the person is going to get out of reading your email. And then the subject line will come naturally from that. Some of the other things that I like to play around with in subject lines is to personalize them, right? Because that works wonders when it comes to open rates. 26% is the figure. 26% boost in open rates when you personalize in the subject line. So have you played around with personalizing much?
Yeah, I have. And we did some last minute research last night, didn't we? Where we were looking at how different age demographics respond to personalization differently.
Yeah.
And I thought that was worth mentioning as well, because you're absolutely right. As a composite average, 26% increase in open rates. But we know that 56% of Gen Zs, aka the young'uns, want to see their name in the subject line, as opposed to only 36% of boomers who prefer not to. I guess there's maybe a cynicism there, because boomers have had more time with email. Yeah. They remember email from the early, more spammy days. Yeah. So maybe for them, it could be a bit uncomfortable that a brand might have access to some of their data, like first names or other forms of personalization.
Yeah. I think, an understanding of the process and an understanding of why and how the data is being used, I think is super important. But we're going to get to personalizing it a bit more in a sec, so spoilers there. Including, I think, for subject lines, also including if you're making an offer, especially if you're an e-commerce brand, right? So if there's an offer that you're offering here, to include that in your subject line can be quite powerful, because it's obviously with e-commerce, the relationship that you have with your subscribers is naturally more transactional, right?
Yeah.
Although we're big advocates of nurturing your list and kind of trying to increase customer lifetime value and nurturing them for the long term, by nature of your business, you're sending out campaigns, and most of the time the goal of that campaign is to get conversions, right? So including your offer in there is something that I think is quite powerful.
Being specific. I think people maybe gravitate towards cloaking that offer until you get into the email itself, using it as the carrot to dangle, so to speak, in order to increase those open rates. Yeah. Actually, it doesn't work. I think being specific with your offer is really important in the subject line. But equally, if you're only sending offers to your audience, eventually that's going to grow stale. So be thoughtful about that as well. And I think that's why you and I are advocates of sending more than just the transactional, even if you're running an e-commerce store. Yeah. Because if you're always sending a 10% discount every 1 or 2 days, and we see it all the time.
We do. In fact, there's one guy who, I'm not going to use his real name, so let's call him Kevin. Sorry if there's someone that's called Kevin that's also doing this. It's not you, Kevin. Kevin, every month sends one email campaign for his e-commerce store, and every month is 10% off. Yeah. Exactly the same throughout the whole year. And for me, I know that I can always get 10% off. So it kind of loses it's the power of that offer is lost, because he's just using it kind of concurrently all the way through the year, right? Yeah. And what would be more powerful if he changed his routine a bit more, include different offers, because he might as well just wipe 10% off his profit margin, right? At this point, because he's never selling anything for more than full price. It's always at 10% off. And we're big advocates of not always just going for the discount, right? In terms of incentives, finding other ways to kind of turn your customers into VIPs, into loyal customers, into advocates for your brand. There are much better ways to do it than just offering discounts all the time.
And if you for whatever reason, have to offer discounts. Let's say you're the email marketing manager in a bigger company and you're being told from your CEO, look, we're going to be doing a 10% discount every single month. Find a reason to offer that 10% discount and communicate that in your subject line. So if you have to give the same offer 12 times a year, once a month, say in the subject line, it's Christmas, here's 10% off. It's dry January, here's 10% off. It's Valentine's Day, here's 10% off. Attribute a reason to the offer so it doesn't look like, as you said, that's just your default price. Because you're right, otherwise, have you ever charged 100% for that product?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, weaving in some kind of story there and some seasonality would be better. So Kevin, if you're watching this,
Kevin's going to be fuming that you
Kevin's
mentioned
going to be
him.
fuming, yeah.
Yeah.
Kevin isn't his
I
real
said
name.
don't mention Kevin.
Sorry, Kevin, it's true though. All right, some subject line like don'ts. Like, what would you say? You know, we audit a lot of accounts, right? So usually our process is that we would jump into someone's back end, so to speak, and we would look at their email activity and what they're doing, and we might pick out some things that they might be doing wrong, right, as well as the things that they're doing right. So what kind of stands out to you in kind of subject lines? What do you see when we do these things and you're thinking, well, you need to change that about your subject lines because it's not hitting the spot?
So we mentioned a few. I think generic repetitive subject lines are a big no-no. It's very easy to be part of the white noise of an inbox. And I think when we send our emails, we have a tendency to imagine that our reader, our recipient, is waiting for our email and paying really close attention to the subject lines we're using and maybe the difference between this month's subject line and last month's subject line. And isn't it interesting that this time they've thrown in this word or this emoji? The reality is that most of your list, unless they're super loyal, aren't going to realize these differences. They're only going to notice you within the context of the other emails that they've received around that time.
Sure, yeah.
So if you're too generic, and not generic necessarily in comparison to past emails that you've sent, but generic in comparison to the rest of the field, then that's going to be a problem and you're going to blend into that inbox white noise. So I would say distinguishing yourself in some way, and it could be something as small as the punctuation that you do or don't use, or maybe you're using all lowercase, for example, and that can just stick out amongst the capital letters saying Black Friday, 10% discount.
Yeah.
So I would say anything that's too generic is a big no-no. It sounds like an obvious one, but subject line length, don't make it too long. There isn't really such a thing as too short for a subject line, although too much brevity maybe doesn't create enough intrigue. In terms of too long, we know that because of the way that Gmail and other email clients display their subject lines, 30 to 50 characters is about optimal, 6 or 7 words. It's not a huge amount to play with. After that, you get the dreaded dotted line, which can be used to your advantage if you're tactical with those first characters. But generally speaking, good idea to keep within that 30 to 50 character range.
Yeah, nice. Okay, whilst we're talking about subject lines and standing out, emojis or nah?
I like an emoji. It's incredibly brand dependent though. And it goes back to a point we made earlier, which is test this stuff. Because if you're the NHS and you're sending emails with aubergine emojis in the subject line, that's going to be a weird vibe. Nobody wants to see that.
Or a funeral director sending party emojis.
Exactly. Leave those champagne emojis to one side if you run a funeral home. Likewise, there are lots of brands that probably could get away with a tactical emoji, and there's probably a whole separate podcast you could do about emoji choice. No doubt there's some sort of software that can do it for you, but there are plenty of brands that could do it and don't, and are potentially leaving open rates on the table. How do you feel about them?
I like them. I like using emojis for subject lines. I think there is such a thing as with any element of your subject line where using them too much or using too many in one subject line, you've got to be clever, right? You've got to be clever and you've got to think about emojis as part of your copy because that's just the way it is now. If you're a copywriter, you need to think about emojis as part of your copy. Think about your brand, think about your personality and your copy kind of style, your tone of voice. Is using the emoji something that complements that? Because that's what it needs to do, right? It needs to complement what you've written otherwise in that subject line. And that counts for the body of your email as well. But they do make your email stand out. And it's surprising when you look down your inbox, how many brands aren't using emojis. you know. And there are statistics out there for which emojis are used the most. And it might not surprise you to learn that, like, the sunshine emoji, the airplane emoji,
Not the aubergine.
not the aubergine, funnily enough.
Okay.
You know, like I think the star emoji, and you know, it's quite. Some of these are quite generic, and I think people could afford to be more clever with the emojis they're using, right? I wouldn't say that using emojis is something that I would do a lot in my copy at all, but I know that they can be powerful if used in the right way.
Yeah. And by having that variable, it means that if your audience is used to seeing you using emojis, and maybe we get to a point one day where you scroll through the inbox and everyone's using an emoji, you then have a distinguishing factor of maybe not using them now and again, and that being a statement in and of itself too. So it just gives you a little bit more to play with. Remember, if we only have such a strict character limit, the more we can get out of those characters, the better. An emoji can say 1,000 words.
I like that. I mean, look, we could delve into the nuances of emojis and subject lines.
We could and should. Let's go.
Yeah. But it's cold, and we've got content to get through, so let's crack on. Okay, so if you were just to sum up kind of subject lines, then if you were going to sum up in one sentence, you know, if someone came to you and said, "Look, can you give me one sentence on subject lines, on how I can nail them going forward?" What would that sentence? How would that sentence sound? What would that look like? Putting you on the spot here.
You are. I would say you should have briefed me about this before, man.
Yeah.
I would say be concise, be specific, create intrigue, and don't mislead your audience.
Okay.
I would say those are the 4 pillars. Oh, and use emojis.
Extra
sentence, bonus sentence.
Okay, nice. Okay, I like that. I'm going to put you on the spot again.
Okay, go on.
Imagine we're sending this podcast out as an email campaign afterwards. What would the subject line for that email campaign be?
That really is.
I'm going to expose you as a
2
fraud
hot
here.
guys on camera.
Yeah, I think that's generous. 2 guys, 1 podcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I would say something like, I think we would want to distill it into something bite-sized and say something like 3 actionable tips you can start using for your email marketing, something like that.
Yeah.
So keeping it quite specific, probably have to shorten it a little bit, maybe get rid of the word actionable or something. But it would be, again, like this isn't rocket science, you know. That, as you can probably tell, was not rehearsed.
Yeah.
But it's distilling what you're doing down to its kind of fundamental value and trying to convey that in as short a sentence as you possibly can.
Yeah. Aubergine emoji?
Obviously.
Good.